Good morning, children. Hope you're all doing well. You are safe at home. Remain safe. Stay locked down. We are going through a difficult phase, and I believe we will all fight it out together. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe. We have already done the first chapter and first poem of Flamingo. In class 12, we have two books. The second book is called Vistas, or it is your supplementary reader. The first chapter of Vistas, we begin with it today. It is called The Third Level, written by Jack Finney. Jack Finney is an American writer. He lived between 1911 and 1995, and this particular story, The Third Level, was published in 1952. Now, what is this story about? The Third Level is the story of this character called Charlie. Who is Charlie? Charlie is a 31-year-old man. He's an ordinary man. He lives with his wife. Peace and serenity happen to be the two things that he wants, rather desperately he wants, in his life. One fine evening, while rushing home, he decides to take the subway from Grand Central Station in New York City. Now, Grand Central Station in New York City has two levels. What happens? He ends up finding himself on the third level of Grand Central Station. Now, how he finds the Grand Central Station? That is, very, very interesting that he finds it. And when he finds it, what he decides? He decides to, to find it out that whether he has really been there, because that day certain things happen. What happens? So when he goes to that third level, because he knows it is not there, he goes and meets his psychiatrist friend, and he tells him that he had been to the third level at Grand Central Station. His psychiatrist friend tells him that it was a waking dream wish fulfillment. He even tells that Charlie was unhappy, and when his wife heard about the explanation, she was absolutely mad. Then his friend, the psychiatrist, explained that the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry, and all the rest of it. And everybody wants to escape it. And Charlie also wanted to escape. And as a result, he had wandered down into any third level at Grand Central Station, which actually did not exist. He further stated that what was Charlie's hobby? Charlie loved stamp collecting. Now, stamp collecting, according to his psychiatrist, was also a temporary refuge from reality. Now, Charlie defends himself. He tells that how can it be so? Because he picked up this hobby from his grandfather. His grandfather also loved to collect stamp, first day cover. He had a wonderful collection. And now remember, his grandfather lived in the late 18th century, and there was no need to look for any kind of refuge or any kind of escape from any anxiety, because the world that his grandfather lived in, that world had not heard about wars. There was no anxiety. Life was plain and simple. So Charlie explains to us that how he had reached the third level at Grand Central Station. He tells us that one night, the last summer, he had worked quite late at the office and he was in a hurry to get uptown to his apartment, to his wife, so he decided to take the subway from Grand Central Station. Now, why did he want to take that? Because it was faster than the bus. Now he wanted to rush home, so he did not want to rush away or run away from the reality. Now, how it happened, Charlie does not know. Charlie says that I'm an ordinary guy and I was wearing a tan gabardine suit. I had a straw hat with a fancy band. I passed a dozen men. I wanted to reach my wife Louisa, who was waiting for me. So he turned into Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and went down the steps to the first level, where you take the trains like the 20th century. Then I walked down another flight to the second level, where the suburban trains leave from. Ducked into a arched doorway heading for the subway, and I was lost. So what happens? But what he realized, that he was bumping into new doorways, new stairs, new corridors, and he once got into a tunnel which he says was around a mile long, and he came out to the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. Another time he came up in the office building on the 46th Street, 3 blocks away. So he always feels that Grand Central is growing like a tree, as the tree has, different branches. And there's probably a long tunnel that nobody knows about. And that is how, and he thinks that tunnel can even take you to Times Square. So, however, so he says that the corridor I was in began angling left, slanting downward. I thought that was wrong, but I kept on walking. He could hear empty sound of his own footsteps. There was nobody around. He could hear hollow roar, and then he turned a sharp left and he went down a flight of stairs and came out on the third level at the Grand Central Station. For a minute, it seemed to him that he was again back to the second level. But he checked the surroundings, and what he found, that the room was smaller, there were fewer ticket windows and train gates, and the information booth in the center was wood and old looking. He even came across the man in the booth who wore green eye shade, long black sleeve protectors. The lights were dim, they were flickering. Then he saw open flash gas lights. Now this was something very unusual. He came across brass spittoons on the floor, and he saw a man pulling out a gold watch from his vest pocket. That was also because he lived in the times when people would see their time on the wristwatch. So he was, and the dress that people wore around him, that was also, the fashion was so different. And to make sure that what is all happening around him, he walked over to a newsboy. And what he found, he glanced at the stack of papers at his feet. And what was the paper there? It was The World. The World hasn't been published for years, so he was very surprised. And the lead story, the top story on the front page, it talked about President Cleveland. So he remembered that, and he later went back to the library to check, and he found in the public library files that it was published in June 11, 1894. So he decided to now move towards the ticket windows. So he goes to the ticket windows, and he wanted to buy tickets. And where did he want to go? He wanted to take Louisa along with him, and he wanted to buy 2 tickets. And 2 tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. Now, why Galesburg, Illinois? Because that was a wonderful town, still with big frame houses, huge lawns, tremendous trees, spread out their branches on the top. And most importantly, the summer evenings were quiet, men smoked cigars. So it was a very, very peaceful world. So since he was sure that it was taking him back in time to be back there when the First World War was still 20 years off, and the Second World War again 40 years from then. So he wanted two tickets. Next, in the next video.